Welcome to the Infill Podcast, where we interview the most interesting members of the 3D printing and maker communities, live and with audience participation. And now, here is your host, Jonathan Levy.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome. I'm very excited to have everyone here today because we are joined by Jake England. He is one of the co-founders of Millennium Machines, and I'm sorry that I'm not looking directly at the camera. I'm looking at my screen here, cameras here, which makes CNCs in the vein of a RepRap or Voron or Positron project. They came on my radar not too long ago, and one of my goals, as you guys know, for 2025 is to support independent creators or people who are making a living out of 3D printing, open source, and contributing to the maker community. So I am absolutely tickled to have Jake on the show. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to hear all the things, but first I want to hear, how long have you been a maker? Have you always been a maker? Oh, wait, but before we do that, I almost forgot something very important, which is supporting the people who support this maker. And we'll do our quick segment, sorry about that, which is called What's Printing, Jonathan? Brought to you by Octo Everywhere. This is PCB Way. Here we go. Octo Everywhere. So as you can see, Octo Everywhere allows me to manage all my printers at home and at the studio. And what's cool is I can be chilling on this podcast and paying attention to what Jake says because I don't have to worry about print failures because Octo Everywhere has their AI print failure detection, which will tell me if something happens to any of my prints. So you can see right now I'm printing on Millipede, some very long multi-board panels. You can see that Python is also printing some, what's the word in English? The word in Hebrew is shlamot, like completions, like finishing pieces. There's not a good word in English. Some like final touches for multi-board. You can see I just started another print remotely on Sailfish. So check out Octo Everywhere. You get a free account and you get $25 credit if you do want to check out their premium account. I use it. I love it. All right. Sorry about that, Jake. Tell me all the things, and I'm going to munch on some pickled cabbage because I've been told I interrupt too much. So I'm just going to munch over here on my lunch. Sorry, guys. And you tell me about your maker journey. Were you a maker kid? Did you become a maker after engineering school? Tell me all the things.
Yeah, so I grew up in East Africa originally, and we didn't really have a lot in the way of like hardware stores for a very long time. So my kind of maker journey started very, very far in the past, where I stole a bit of railroad track that wasn't being used from a mate of mine. Used a grinder to grind it down, used that as an anvil, and I started blacksmithing when I was very, very little. I think I was like 10 when I started, 9 or 10 when I started doing it. And my parents were typical kind of like born in Africa parents. They just let me at it. If a grinding disc came and flew back and hit me in the eye, then that was my fault type of thing. But it was a kind of fun journey like that. So I kind of did that blacksmithing. I went to high school in South Africa. I went to boarding school, and we had a big design and technology lab there, and I started doing some proper making when I was over there. And then kind of when I moved to the UK, I kind of got involved in 3D printing in a really roundabout way. I won't go into the story. I've told it a million times.
Okay.
Unless you want me to. And then, started doing kind of the PC building side of things, the CNC side of things, all because of the 3D printing entry point that I had.
That's really cool. I'm curious if intentionally you didn't mention where in East Africa, because I'm curious. I've spent time in East Africa. You don't have to share if you don't want to.
No, it's absolutely fine. I was born in Tanzania in a city called Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
And then my family now lives in Kenya, just outside Mombasa.
Gosh, I found Kenya to be one of the most beautiful places on the planet. It's one of the only places that you can have a real opportunity. I mean, Kenya, Tanzania, East Africa is one of the only places you can have a real opportunity to see all the wildlife that I'm absolutely obsessed with in person, not in a cage, which is so cool.
It's always funny because I have a lot of friends who talk about how they go on safari and they go to see lions and elephants and things like that. My house in Kenya is literally like a 20-minute drive from the closest elephant park.
No kidding.
And what a lot of the locals do is they just get fold up chairs and plastic cups, and they sit on the edge of the fence line, so they don't have to pay the tourist fees,
Yeah.
and watch the elephants come by. It's really funny.
I was talking with my wife the other day, total tangent, but I was saying like, I'm living my dream, but like if my ultimate dream, right? Like Elon Musk wants to go to Mars and Jeff Bezos wants to like make space travel. My ultimate dream would be to buy like 1,000,000 acres somewhere in Africa and just create a wildlife preserve. I know there's a lot of wildlife preserves, just let me dream here, but like create like a full wildlife preserve and just spend my day admiring the animals whose lives I've saved. But
Yeah.
we're a lot of YouTube sponsorship spots away from that dream. But one day, I'll be your neighbor.
One day.
So I do want to ask about the journey from 3D printing to CNC. And the reason I'll frame the question as kind of where I'm at, which is the opposite direction, right? I think 3D printing has become so accessible, and now it's kind of a gateway drug into other things. A lot of times, like a laser might come after that. Hey, I want to be able to do acrylic, or a CNC with you guys and Carvera. There are now desktop CNCs coming out. Do you think one is more conducive to going to the other, or do you think 3D printing is the better starting point, CNC is a better starting point?
I think 3D printing is definitely the better starting point, because the thing is with 3D printing, especially nowadays with everyone kind of upping their game recently, it's the most easy access to being able to make something, right? So you can just take a file, press print, and it will most of the time nowadays print. So
Nowadays.
yeah, nowadays you get that satisfaction of having made something, but you don't have to necessarily have the background and the training. Whereas CNC is a lot more involved. You can't just press the button and go.
So I'm glad you say that, because sometimes I wonder how much of my difficulties, and I'm known for my difficulties, are, because I don't have an engineering background, or if it's just harder. And I was inspired when we met at Smurf this last time. I was like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure out CAM and CNC, and Carvera sent over one of their machines, which I know is a competitor kind of to you guys. And it's a lot to learn, right? It's very involved. But then I kind of harken back to like when I learned 3D printing. I remember trying to print TPU at 190C, and there was a lot to learn there. Do you think it's comparable in learning curve to 3D printing once you get up and going, or is it the case
I think
it's
definitely more intimidating.
Yes.
So no matter what the curve is, even if the similar curve, excuse me, I'll turn that off.
All good. Live show. That's that's how people know we're not faking it.
All right, let's put that out there. Yeah, so basically, even though the curve might be the same, the actual learning might be the same all the way through, it's a lot more intimidating sending an end mill going 24,000 RPM towards a bit of material than it is to just have a hot end splooge out a bit of plastic.
That is so true. And, when there's metal shavings flying everywhere, I think you're right. I think a big part of it is, you need to, your brain needs to work a little bit differently because you're doing things in passes, and you have to think the beauty of 3D printing, right, is like you can manufacture these impossible objects because you're building layer by layer. Whereas with CAM, you have to be a little bit more methodical, from my very limited experience, about like, okay, first I'm going to do this process, then that process. I do want to ask, what are your tips? I imagine your product line is probably a lot of people's first CNC. And from my understanding, the game, if we've learned anything from Bamboo Lab, the game is won or lost in terms of how quickly and easily can people get up with your product. So how do you guys recommend that your customers learn all this stuff?
Well, first things first is you kind of you've got to do a lot of research into actual CAM pathing as just a general thing. There's three topics I always talk about: learning the difference between CNC and and 3D printing, for example. That's one topic, and you can just have a baseline knowledge of what the actual difference is. But you'd be surprised by the amount of people who come through, build an entire machine, and then don't actually know what a spindle is.
Yeah.
So just having that baseline knowledge is kind of your first port of call. Learning CAM, which you can do quite easily nowadays. If you go online, depending on what CAM package you're using, you'll get varying degrees of tutorials. For Fusion 360, which is what we support mostly, it's actually really easy to learn CAM. You just got to take the time to watch those videos.
Okay.
And it's a very much a path by path learning curve. It's not like 3D printing where everything's there at all times in your slicer. You can wear all your settings and you can change one by one. When you're doing CAM, it's very much path related. So you need to learn effectively. Imagine learning how to slice, but for every single different operation that your 3D printer was doing.
I see.
So whether you're doing a contour pass or a 3D adaptive or anything like that, you need to learn the variables that you need that go into making those cuts good.
I see.
In the
And
first
what
place.
you're saying is that each one is a little bit different and there's different things you need to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Got
So
you.
for example, like a contour pass is what we call a full engagement pass. So the entire width of the tool is always being used. And for that kind of thing, you need to be worrying about chip clearance. You need to be worrying about whether your tool is rigid enough, you're not getting enough deflection. More so than in a 3D adaptive, for example, where there's a lot more leeway and you can get away with just ramming your end mill through a little easier.
What's
Because
3D
you're only
adaptive?
using...
Sorry?
So a 3D adaptive basically means it's what we call a roughing pass. So it's the first pass you would do on in CAM, and it's the bulk removal of any pockets or things like that. But the thing that makes it adaptive is it's creating the path to always have a constant engagement, whereas a non-adaptive toolpath will go then go into cutting air for a bit, then cut air for a bit. An adaptive toolpath will always be cutting, and that makes tool life last longer.
Got it.
It's
Interesting.
less taxing on the tools.
Interesting. And I was going to ask you, where should people start in terms of software? I started playing around with Kirimoto and it was a little overwhelming. I don't love Fusion.
Yeah.
I don't love the way it runs on my computer, but it sounds like you're not the first person to tell me that's kind of the easiest way to go.
Yeah. Have a look at NYC CNC. He doesn't do a lot of CAM content anymore, but back in the day, it was all about CAM tutorials and things like that. He does more the business side now, but he's the easiest one to learn from. He goes into depth about every single process you can get in Fusion. It's a really, really good way to learn.
And I get the sense that, as you said, it's a pass-by-pass learning process, but also you can literally learn as you go, because unlike 3D printing, you don't just hit go and it, you can stop in between the passes and go, okay, this isn't what I expected. Maybe I need to do another pass of this.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting.
And that kind of brings me to my third one, which is you just got to be brave with CNC. Unlike 3D printing, where you can always just slow the machine down,
right?
You can't do that with CNCs. They have to maintain something called a minimum chip load. So imagine if you have a tool that's moving into material. If it moves slower, each chip that comes off of the material is smaller.
Right.
Yeah. If it moves faster, each chip becomes thicker.
Right.
So there's a minimum threshold that you need to meet when you're doing CNC stuff, where the heat that's being produced from the cut is being taken away by the chips themselves.
Right.
Right. If they're too slow, if those chips are too thin, you're leaving too much heat in the part, which, if you're using aluminium, could mean that the part actually just melts on you.
Whoa.
Because it's producing that one. Yeah, it does happen. Or it means that your tool life will just decrease by a whole lot. There's a whole other thing. So being brave in the CNC world makes a lot of sense. Pushing harder when you can, but also
That's
not
interesting.
pushing hard in stupid ways. Like know
Right.
the limits of your machine, but try and get to the limits of the machine.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. One other struggle that I'm having is, as they say, when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I think
Mm.
for me, and I imagine, let me know in the chat, guys, if you guys feel this way as well. Like, my mindset is so adapted towards what can I do with plastic that, if I need something stronger, I'll just use PPSCF or something like that. And I've been really struggling. Like, I want to learn this, and I want to practice, and I've been really struggling to find use cases because, okay, a lot of consumer CNCs can do aluminum, but maybe not tool steel, right? So it's like, well, we now have filaments that are almost as strong as aluminum. And so my question is, like, what are good projects for a CNC that I can't just do with a 3D printer? What kind of stuff are your customers learning and kind of breaking in their machines on?
Mostly 3D printer parts, believe it or not. There's a plethora of people who do 3D printer parts. A lot of people who do car modifications where they don't quite trust the longevity of 3D printed parts.
Right.
So things like where ABS is fine for a bookshelf, it's not
Yeah.
exactly fine for a muffler, for example.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of things where you just need um, that knowing, like ability to know that that part is always going to be able to
Yeah.
withstand whatever it's going to go through. 9 Mile, one of the guys who we work with, started off with the project in just building bike parts for himself, like motorcycle parts, and he's
Yeah.
still got a bunch of motorcycle parts that he made himself
Right.
because KTM was charging a ridiculous fee for them.
Right.
So
And is that like aluminum? I know I was blown away at Smurf. You showed me steel parts that had been cut, which I think is an advantage you guys have over some other products out there like the Carvera Air, where your machine will happily cut steel. But I guess, is aluminum as soft as I think it is, or is it still better than, in a lot of cases, a 3D printed part?
it depends on the grade of aluminium. You can
Mm,
go from 2000 series, which is really, really soft and really gummy and tends to gum up your end mills quite a lot. But it's
okay.
good for, I think it's made for specifically marine applications because it corrodes a lot less.
Okay.
Then your typical machining series starts in the 6000 series. There's a 4000 and 5000 series as well, I believe. But so 6061 and 6068.
Right.
Sorry, 6060. Yeah, 6068, I think. Those are kind of your machining ones. Those are on the border of, if you aren't feeding fast enough, it's going to gum up, but it's still pretty good and it's a decent price. And then you get
Mm,
to 7075, so 7000 grade, 7000 series material, which is really good. Has an incredibly strong tensile strength. So even within the same broad variety of aluminium, you get loads of different material characteristics that you can deal with. Same with if you're buying PLA from one vendor and
yes, that's
PLA from a
true.
second vendor.
Yeah. And I imagine this is where we always somehow come back to CAD skills. If you want to get the most out of your machines, and really, as a maker, you want to get the most out of everything that you can. It comes down to CAD skills, and I guess you could do. I don't know if the Free Fusion allows you to do strength analysis, actually.
I think you can. I think you can.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Oh, this was a few years ago. I did it when I started the project on the free license, and I was able to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then, okay, tell
There's a
me.
lot of weight savings, believe it or not, with aluminium as
Yeah.
well. So you'd be surprised by the thing is you can make. There's an old adage in engineering, which is an engineer could make the best bridge in the world. It would never collapse. It would never fall over. And that's a good engineer. A great engineer is someone who can build a bridge that nearly falls over but doesn't. Because he's used. That's what a great engineer does. And it's the same thing with when you're talking about like plastic parts versus aluminium parts. If you're talking about lightweight gantry stuff, you can make a gantry that is just as strong for a quarter of the weight with aluminium, whereas you could make one that's just as strong but 4 times the weight with a plastic part.
Right. Okay, I want to understand the adage first though. Is that because of cost savings, material
It's
savings?
it's yeah, it could be cost saving. There's you can interpret it in a load of ways. There's
Yeah,
there's a million different ways to say it. One of them is like, oh, I can do it with the materials that I'm given and
got
under
it.
these constraints, type of thing.
Got it. Okay. All right. Cool. I'm
Apologies,
starting to
someone else
understand.
is calling me.
No, no worries.
Oh my god!
Live
Right,
show.
I thought I turned you off. Sorry.
No worries.
Right,
Like I said,
it's turned
very
off
very
properly.
casual show. Uh
Apologies.
there's so much here, right? And there's so much to learn. And one of my big takeaways so far is like, you know, 3D printing is great indoors, but when you're talking automotive, when you're talking
Yeah,
marine, you probably want metal. When people's lives are, being transported by this engine. Huh. What are the upper limits? Okay, so we talked about the lower limits. What are the upper limits? Like I know there's 4 axes machines, and like how capable are these kinds of desktop machines like the ones that you guys sell?
the thing I have a real gripe with desktop machines.
Yeah.
A lot of the time they're feature rich, performance poor. That's
Mm,
the way I put it. So I like the Carvera. The Carvera is honestly a better introduction to CNC than what we have. It's also around, for the cheapest model, around twice the price,
right.
and you grow out of it quite quickly.
Yeah, I
Um,
imagine.
the spindles on them are tiny, and the motion system's not that great at the end of the day when you're trying to do some really gnarly stuff. Whereas for Milo, my kind of philosophy with it and with the whole of all of our CNCs is keep them as simple as possible, but make them do the things that they want to do well.
Yeah.
Right. So they currently in the open source space, there's no real machine that beats the material removal rate of Milo.
Hmm.
Material removal rate is a whole nother metric we can talk about. It's kind of like the benchy of the CNC world.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's always upper limits. You can always add axes. We have some guys on the team who work in CNC in their private lives, and they're working on 5, 6, 7 axis machines or 7 degree of freedom, because an axis is different to a degree of freedom, but still.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Um,
That's crazy.
yeah. So they use the big DMG Moris, the big Haas machines, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So there's a big ceiling to go through. The issue is kind of more like when do you stop using extrusions and things like that and go to fully cast machines,
Yeah.
cast iron machines? And we kind of straddle that line quite well with Milo, where the performance we're getting is a much better bang for buck than, say, a Chinese cast iron machine. It
Right.
also depends on where you are in the world. They're a lot cheaper in China. And we also get the educational bonus where you're actually building the machine from the top,
Sure.
from the ground up. But as we've seen in the kind of 3D printing space lately, that's not always a driving factor for people.
Yeah.
Not
Less and
everyone wants to
less.
build the machine. Yeah,
It kind of blows my mind. This is probably going to sound like such a stupid non-engineer thing, but it kind of blows my mind that you've built a machine that can mill steel out of aluminum extrusions. And it just shows, first off, how strong aluminum extrusions are if you use the right profile. But I guess a lot of
yeah,
engineering went into the axes of strength and things like that.
yeah. It's simple concepts scaled up. So it's
Mm,
things like understanding the inherent understanding that heavier things are harder to vibrate. Okay, so we need to
yeah.
make a heavy machine. Okay, aluminium resonates quite badly. Okay, well, in that case, we need to dampen it using epoxy granite or something like that. And it's having those very basic knowledge points and
Got you.
bringing them together. That's the challenge.
Wow. Really cool. And then obviously Milo uses a lot of 3D printed parts as well.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
Milo uses a lot of 3D printed parts, mostly in compression, because 3D prints actually do really well in compression.
right.
If you looked at some CNC Kitchen's his old videos where he's still doing the tensile testing, he modified his test machine to do some compression tests, and he could barely get any of them to break. I think he
Yeah.
managed to get one to actually break, and that was it.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
That's
so
wild. That's
you
wild.
you
And are you
can
guys printing
use
the parts on Vorons, or what do you print the parts on?
whatever I have available at the time. I've gone through so many machines. I went
Yeah.
through some Cheedy X Smarts
Mm.
for a while because they were a cheap machine at the time,
Hmm.
and they didn't last more than a year, I'm afraid. So I don't
Yeah.
have very good things to say about Cheedy. I hope their new machine's better. The Plus 4 is better.
I had
I'm
the same
currently,
problem with the X Max 3. Died after 6 months.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Hmm.
mine was just bed leveling. It just wouldn't save the bed level, the Z offset properly. So
Yeah.
every single time I started the machine up or started a print, I would have to re-level it
Yeah.
or redo the Z offset. Sorry. We moved to Bamboo Labs P1Ss
Hmm.
a few months ago. Yeah. I've still got my Voron Trident. Voron Trident was an LDO sponsor actually,
Mm.
and that got the first prototype of V1.5 off the ground.
That's awesome.
So
That's
yeah,
very
we
kind of like true to the ethos.
yeah.
And then, whoops, are are you
Sorry.
guys using ABS, PETG? What are the printed parts on such a robust machine made out of?
It's ABS. It's simple. It's
That's it, huh?
ABS. The reason is because PTG is still just a little bit too ductile
Yeah.
for most of the parts that we make, and PLA's not got enough heat
Yeah,
protection for it.
of course. Yeah. That's really interesting. How many hours does it take to build one of these machines?
Um, depends on how quickly you are. I can build one in a day if I'm concentrating.
No
But
kidding.
we're building the first prototype of V1.6 on our stream at the moment, and
Okay.
that's taking a lot longer because obviously I'm streaming the whole time and I don't
Yeah.
have a manual to follow. So I'd say for
Mhm.
the majority of people, it's a 10 to 12 hour build.
That's not so bad. That's a lot
Yeah,
less than a Voron. A lot less
yeah.
than
I
a
actually
Voron.
think it's a much simpler machine in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I guess so, huh? I
Hmm.
guess so.
You don't have to deal with belts. What's it calling?
Yeah, that's
Running
true.
belts and things like that.
There's probably a lot fewer sensors as well, fans and things like that. I want to pivot us because another thing that you and I are both passionate about is supporting open source and open source creators. Speaking of which, one of my favorite creators and designers, Nadir, just logged on. I'm going to really quickly thank the people who support so many people in the community, which is PCBWay, and then we'll chat about that. As you guys know,
Yeah.
PCBWay, oh, that's the wrong camera, but that's okay. Hi, that's me. As you guys know, PCBWay will do all the things for you. If you haven't yet built your own Milo CNC, they can CNC parts for you, but they can also do 3D printed steel, which currently there's no way to get an open source metal 3D printer yet. They can do industrial 3D printing for you, injection molding, PCBs. Obviously, it's in the name. There's a link in the description where you can get $5 off your first order. And everything I've ever ordered from them has been super high quality, super quick turnaround, and just phenomenal customer service. So thank you, PCBWay, for supporting the channel. And we're back. So you and I are both passionate about open source and supporting open source creators and making it viable for people to make a living in open source as well, which I think is a distinction. A lot of people are passionate about open source. Not a lot of people are passionate about, hey, people who work in open source should make money. And you told me earlier you've got some thoughts on it. So I'm going to leave it completely
Yeah.
open to you.
So it kind of hit me a few months ago, and it's been something that I've been struggling with for a very long time. When I initially started in this space, I always looked at people like Voron and went, they're doing it absolutely for free. Open source should always be for free. It should always be out there, and you shouldn't really be making a profit off of that. That was my original idea. And then I kind of started to talk to a lot of the Voron guys, and running my own project, things like that. It takes a lot to actually run the project that people don't see. There's a big, if you're running a project of my size without kind of compensation from the community, it's actually a big financial drain on the individual who's running it. So like I talked about in a video I made recently that in last year alone, we spent 10 grand. We spent 10 to 15 grand, between 10 and 15 grand on just parts and things like that. Because people don't realize that to make a machine, you need to effectively buy the machine 2 or 3 more times than what the actual like cost is. So it started to creep in slowly. And I started to see the same thing in a lot of other communities, so like Positron, even to an extent Ratrig. Ratrig makes a profit off their hardware, but all that design work is effectively done for free.
Right.
And the reason they do that is to bring products to the end user a lot cheaper, effectively, because open source does that. It makes things cheaper in the long run. But a lot of these time, these people were struggling. And then I came to a point in my life where I got laid off semi-recently in the last few months, like 4 or 5 months ago, from my job, because the world is as it is at the moment.
Right.
And layoffs are becoming more and more current thing.
Right.
And I kind of look back at everything I'd done and the amount of hours that I put in, because I've been working on this project for 3 or 4 years. And we do make a little bit of money on the side from LDO. We do make a commission from them, like a 3% on every thing that they make. And I've made a small amount of money. But comparing it to the hours I've worked, that would be less than $1 an hour that I've been working for the last 3 years. And that's not even including the amount of money, of my own personal money, that I've sunk into the project. So in actuality, I've probably made in the kind of minuses an hour, like less money an hour than what it would be worth. So my big push now is to, not just for myself, is to get any creator I see just to try and start making this a reality for them, because they love what they do. They obviously all love what they do. And they should benefit just as much as the community is.
Agreed.
Right?
Absolutely agreed.
And I'm not saying they need to become big multinational companies that only do open source stuff like Linux does. As long as they can kind of make their own, whatever they see as a comfortable amount of money, that's what I'm happy with. And it's obviously per individual taste as well. If you want to make more money out of it, I'm absolutely fine with that. I'm just at a point where I just want to be able to cover my own expenses so that I can do this full time, so that I can bring more and more focused attention to the project and bring the project alive a little bit more at the same time. So that's kind of where I'm encouraging people to go to, because at the end of the day, if you're the leader of the project, or whoever is doing the project can do it full time, you're going to get nothing but benefits from it.
100%. 100%. And, you know, I echoed a similar sentiment in my kind of open letter to the community. And 95% of the comments were absolutely, wow, never thought of it that way. There were 5% of the comments that really left me scratching my head, where they were like, no one's forcing these people to do this. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. And I'm like, way to miss the point. They want to do it. They want to do it, but someone shouldn't go into debt so that all of us can enjoy and benefit. You know, I think of it as like, I don't remember what the term is in English. For some reason, my English just didn't come online this morning, but it's like an economic inefficiency, right? Is like people value the work, the free hand of the market economy found someone who's willing to do the work, and yet they're not getting paid. Like it's a triangle that's not completed because of this lofty, important and wonderful ideology of open source. But it's like, first off, let's all remember that a lot of these projects started as for-profit endeavors, right? Voron was a for-profit endeavor before it was open sourced. And
so I was not him.
Yeah, and had the market supported it, it would have stayed a for-profit endeavor. Now, maybe they would have, hopefully they would have open sourced their designs anyway, in the similar way that Prusa does and now Sovel does, and a lot of companies do, which I'm happy to see. I just have a fundamental issue with people profiting, and I mean that in the wider sense, right? Even if it's profiting by enjoying your work, not commercially. I have a problem with people profiting from the labor of someone who themselves is economically putting themselves in an unfair situation. Now, if it's like, you're a multi-millionaire and it's your passion project, cool. That's great. That's awesome. That's your way of giving back, right? For the success you've had. But like, I know a lot of people designing a lot of open source projects. I know you, and I know the Voron guys, and I know the ERCF guys, and I know the Positron guys, and every single one of them is like, if I could pay my mortgage doing this, I would really love to.
Yeah, I agree with you. Especially if you look at a lot of the open source kind of crowd as well, a lot of them aren't trained engineers.
Right.
It may be that the time has passed them by, that they can't. It's too late for them to go get an engineering degree or something like that. Right. So to be able to work in a space that they actually love, that they found themselves, and be able to make it work for them, is a really fulfilling thing. But it needs to be able to work for them.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, like you said the example of people who are uber rich or well off. Like, most of my team are actually trained engineers. They have the engineering jobs. That's great. I, on the other hand, I started this as a hobby, and my degree is in the outdoors. Like my degree is in climbing, which doesn't really have the same.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I kind of missed the opportunity because I found out that I love this kind of thing well after I finished university.
Same.
Yeah. So for people like us, who this is the easiest way to break into this kind of job, and it's the way that is most fulfilling as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm not beholden to a company. I'm only beholden to the people of my community, and I can only do right by them.
Yeah.
Whereas a company can do what they want. You've seen what Bamboo's doing recently.
Right. And you have to jump through hoops to be an engineer at a company like this. There's still a lot of opinions about what qualification looks like. I'm curious because I outlined in my video a bunch of different things that I think need to change, and I was really happy to see that some of them have changed, whether it's as a result of my video or otherwise. But I'm curious, like, I want to leave the question open-ended again. What do you think has to change? What do you think we as a community need to do better? What do these open source designers need to do better? Like, what do we need to change to make, because you're in the trenches every single day. I can pontificate about it and say this is what I think would work as an entrepreneur on the outside. But you're in the trenches every single day talking to customers who are using your products. So what do you think has to change?
Well, we'll split that question in two. We'll do a community side, we'll do a creator side.
Okay.
Creator side's the easiest one, I think. Creators just need to be more confident in the fact that what they're putting out is what people want, and
Agreed.
It's worth something. It is your work, your hard work, the hours that you spend at your desk doing CAD or putting parts together or putting printers together or CNC machines. It's worth something.
Yeah.
Right? There wouldn't be industrial jobs that do that if it wasn't worth something.
Right.
It's up to the individual to value it themselves. To say, okay, this work is worth $10, that work is worth $8 or whatever. So it's up to the individual to decide how much it's valued, but they need to realize that it is a valuable piece of work that they're doing.
Yeah. And I'll interject as
On
well. The fact that it open source means it should be available for free doesn't mean that everyone. It does mean that everyone should be able to get it for free. It doesn't mean that you should work for free. And there are plenty of generous people out there who are happy to pay for open source designs or happy to pay for, you have to be careful with licensing, but like Nadir does this, right? Where it's like, okay, this is based on an open source Voron design, so it has to be, free and open source. We've based it on open source. It has to be open source. But, this customized part, or if you want, access to, I'm now spitballing, Nadir, I don't think does this. Like, hey, the manual costs a $3 donation if you want a manual on how to assemble it, or if you want an instructional video of how to use it. All those things, totally fine, and still abide by the rules. So
it's interesting that you said that, because we've thought about this on the design team at some stage or another, and it's not a for sure thing. So
sure,
don't, if people are
pitchforks
watching,
down.
don't read too much into it just yet. But one of the ideas was to kind of do. This is actually an idea from the D&D side of things, the Dungeons and Dragons community, where a lot of the time modelers and people who design minis and things like that, or terrain, will release something, release something that is paid for. They will then hit a goal or hit a time limit, and then everything will then be released for free. So
Yeah.
one of the ideas we had was, maybe if we wanted to make a fourth axis or this, that, and the next thing, set a $500 limit or something like that. Anyone who pays into it, they can pay whatever they'd like. They get those files early on, and then once it hits that $500 limit, then it goes free to the world, and
That's a
everyone
cool
can
idea.
access it.
That's a cool idea.
So we're thinking about that because it benefits everyone, and there's all those really hardcore people, like you mentioned earlier, who are happy to let a bit of cash go or anything like that. But yeah,
I also think, I said this in my video, but I really think a part of it is, like, you called it confidence. I call it chutzpah, a little bit, living in Israel and being of the tribe. Like, some people may think of it as chutzpah, but like, I'll pick on the ERCF guys. Maybe let's pick on something else, something that people self-source more. Vorons. I don't know if people self-source those. Let's just say there's a project, okay? And it's like, it's open source and it's easy enough to self-source, not like a Voron where it's 25,000 different pieces. It's easy enough that some people are still self-sourcing. Do people self-source, Milo? I feel like once LDO...
we've got it's about I'd say about a quarter of people do.
I was going to say, once LDO makes a kit, I feel like, more than 50% of people go, I'm just going to use the LDO kit because it's quality components. In any case, let's just say, okay, 50% of people self-source this thing, right? You may think it's chutzpah. I think it's kind of cultural training, right? You teach people how to treat you is my thing. And just to put on the page, hey, if you're going to self-source, that's great. The recommended donation is $25. It's recommended and it's a donation, but like, that's what we would make if you bought the kit. And that's, the recommended donation if you wish to support continue. I don't see that as chutzpah, but I know a lot of designers would be like, I feel icky about that. So I don't know. What are my thoughts?
So it does kind of lead well into the next point, which is like what I think the community can do. So
Yes.
this is a personal opinion of mine. You said, the recommended amount is donate $25.
Right.
I don't think any single donation should ever be more than $5.
Really?
But there's a reason for that. So I'll get on to it. To people who are doing this kind of thing day by day, in and out all the time, it's much better, I think, personally, to get a consistent amount of money in every month.
Yes. Okay.
So instead of we've had people who have donated $100 at one time, and that's great. That's amazing. I really always appreciate it. But that $100 tends to be the only thing that they donate, and it
That's
means
true.
that there may be obstacles in the future that we've not seen yet. So we either hold that money in reserve, or we spent it and we
Yeah.
would need it later, stuff like that. So my opinion is between $1 and $5 should be the amount that you donate
Per
consistently
month.
over a
Yeah.
year's work. Yeah, per month, rather than just all at one time, because it
That's
just
a
makes
really
it
nice point,
easier.
Jake. This is why I loved, as I said, I'm sitting on the outside, but you make a really important point, which is especially if it's, you know, something like a Voron where they're now on 2.4 R2 C3, you know, you're going to benefit from ongoing development, right? I know
Yeah,
Nadir is every single time it's inevitable. I love you, Nadir. I'm making fun of you I'm going to make a little fun of you, which is every time, as soon as I print the parts, then he goes, "Hey, we figured out a way to optimize it. It's going to be much stronger." Like my whole trash can here is full of ABS parts because Nadir's like, "Hey, man, so I don't print the parts anymore until we're actually going to assemble them." But that just goes to show Nadir and Christian are constantly optimizing, and I'm sure you guys are as well. And I love your point that it's like, hey, uh, what's the likelihood that when you go and download those revisions, you're gonna remember to donate?
yeah,
I'm still an ongoing monthly contributor to Clipper. But yeah, I didn't think of that when it comes to Voron or ERCF or a lot of the other open source projects. I donated once and then, as you said, forgot about it. I love that point. Huh.
yeah. I do the same with Positron and with some content creators as well.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty consistent with donating to people like Mandic, really, and to Nero. I know he's called Canuck Creator nowadays, but I still
Yeah.
call him Nero.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because those people, even if they're not the open source designers, they're open source promoters at the very
Yeah.
least, and their work also shouldn't go unpaid.
Yeah.
It takes a village to run a company, doesn't it?
It really does. I had an interesting idea, which I imagine people are going to hate in the chat, right? But there's this whole thing about Bamboo, like, oh, you're going to have to subscribe to use your printer. And people are really up in arms about that. But ironically, I did a little consulting for another open source piece of software that died, basically. It's called Quicksilver for Mac. It's an app launcher. And it was dying because no one could maintain it. The guy got a job, I think, at Apple. And then the community just couldn't, there wasn't anyone around. And one of the things I told them to do is I was like, hey, you know, not every time the app opens, but every time you restart your computer, it should have a little pop-up that says like, hey, would you like to support, if you've supported for that version. So once you donate, and you can hide the pop-up and say never show it again and everything, but it's like, hey, we just updated the software. Would you like to donate? Because you just restarted your computer and you got an automatic update. And I think it could be an interesting thing for Clipper to do that, right? Although Clipper is one of those things you really don't want to update unless you need to. But I think
Yeah,
it could be really interesting. Like, again, no bad ideas, but maybe this is a bad idea. Every time you run a print, right? You probably need micropayments. Let me just get to the idea. I don't know how it would
yeah,
happen, but a Clipper screen upgrade that's like, hey, you're about to run a print. Would you like to donate 50 cents for this print to Clipper or Voron or whatever? It's like, how many prints does the average person do a year? 200 prints? 1,000 3D prints at 50 cents each? That's
yeah,
$100.
yeah.
No,
Exactly.
it's $50. No, it's 500
Yes,
bucks. Doesn't
I'm just gonna go
matter.
with whatever you say.
Well, 10 cents. And then I'm realizing you would need
Yeah,
micropayments to do that. But
yeah.
like,
My
or you know, just once a quarter, there a summary email that you get, which says, hey, these are all the prints you did on your Voron this month, has a little donate button. It's
yeah.
an interesting idea. Maybe. I
Yeah,
don't
it
know.
is. Well, I kind of had a similar thought. When I had my kind of realization a few months ago about this, trying to make this be more
Yeah.
sustainable for me. One of the things I realized that we have over 3,500 people on the Discord,
Yep.
right? And they might not even just be building Milo. They might be using our electronics or this, that, and the next thing, because our electronics can be ported to other CNCs quite easily. So we always give that active support. If all of them gave $1 a month, I would be able to live and still have maybe $1,500 to spend on the project every month.
Yeah.
And that's $1 out of people's lives. That's less than the value of a coffee nowadays.
A lot less. And
Yeah.
that raises another point that I mentioned in my video that I strongly felt was the right move, and a lot of people said was a slippery slope down the wrong path, which is a cultural change. And also, I don't want to call it like shaming, right? But I want to call it like there's a better word, and as someone said in the chat, I've run out of English airtime minutes today for some reason. But basically, stigma is the word that I used, right? Like there should be a stigma if you're in the Milo CNC Discord and you're asking a lot of questions. Fine, some people casually join to check it out, cool. But if you're in there every day and you're asking questions and you don't have that supporter badge, maybe we don't say anything. We don't shame people and be like, hey, you're a cheap prick. But, we casually mention, the mods casually mention, hey, really glad that you're enjoying the Discord. We noticed that you don't have the supporter badge. Supporting on Discord costs $1 a month. It's optional, but recommended. You built $1,000 CNC. You can afford $1 a month, And I really think, and I'd be curious to hear what people in the chat say, but I think we need that kind of a stigma, right? It's like you wouldn't go to there's a stigma against going to a restaurant and not tipping. You need to tip, even though I disagree with the philosophy behind tipping, which is not paying people a living wage and making the customer. There's still that stigma. I wouldn't dare go to a restaurant unless someone spit in my food. I wouldn't not tip. And yet we do that all the freaking time with open source projects, so I feel strongly about
someone
that.
in your chat kind of, I think there's definitely a middle ground there, but someone in your chat said, once they built one of our machines, donate and that's it.
Yeah.
The issue with that is it's quite throwaway. Right? It's really generous of you, don't get me wrong, but it's also quite throwaway in your thinking. To just say, okay, I've got this machine, I'm going to donate $5 once it's built, but I'm going to have this machine for 5, 6, 7 years.
And benefit from the updates.
And benefit from the updates. And all I've done to clear my conscience is given that $5 once.
Exactly.
And it's gone. So it's thinking like that is kind of conscience clearing. And I'm not saying it's bad. If that's what you want to do, I encourage it. Right?
Yeah.
But I do want to open up the thinking for a lot of people as to what they're actually getting from the projects. Right?
Yeah.
I don't mind people who if they buy Milo, they put it together and they leave it in a corner for 2 years and they don't want to contribute anything to that. I also don't mind that. Right?
Yeah.
There has to be a happy medium between the two.
I love that. And that's
nowadays.
a huge, this has been my biggest takeaway from the conversation, besides the fact that maybe I need to try Fusion 360, is ongoing is what you guys need. And I know, Nadir also has another business that he would like to autopilot and focus on this. I hope, Nadir, you don't mind me sharing that, but I think you've shared that publicly before. It needs to be ongoing. It's not enough to do a one-time donation. And that may hurt to hear for those of us who are used to getting everything for free, right? We get Facebook for free and we get Google for free and we get YouTube for free. But as someone said in the chat, and I'm pivoting towards asking a question, Iconic Fab said, I have a question for you, Jake, if I may. You recently openly disclosed Milo income numbers, and to be honest, they were shockingly low for such a great and popular project. What is your long-term plan?
That's a kind of ongoing thing at the moment. Long term, I would really like to open this up as a foundation, same way Linux does, same way Raspberry Pi does. Have the Milo Foundation. At the moment, we don't really bring in enough income to be able to do that. So it would kind of start off with with making sure people get their due first and foremost. Once once the project makes enough money to be able to pay myself a monthly allowance, because I still do 90% of all the design work, and then pay
Wow.
all the other people on the team. I do the mechanical design stuff. 9Mile is the next biggest contributor because he does all the software stuff for Milo. So he would then he's then next in line for the due, and I want it to trickle down all the way through. Once everyone gets their due, whether that be because they contributed $200 worth of work a month, or
Yeah.
this, that, and the next thing, that's when we can start thinking about this being a foundation, hopefully. But that's years in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if that's 5 years down the line, type of thing. I'm not a rapid growth person. I don't treat this like a business a lot of the time. I treat it as I know you have a different opinion on it, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
you see on my face, I find it frustrating because I think in a lot of ways I am, it's okay. First of all, I'm more capitalistic than a lot of people in this community, and I know that, right? Like I came from a much higher paying job, and I'm happy to take the 1/7 or 6/7 pay cut that I took to be here because I love it more. But also, fuck, man, people are using these machines day in, day out. It's their hobby, it's their passion. And the people making them are struggling to survive. And the reason you saw me kind of frowning is like, I think it's so noble, that you're thinking about this slow timeline and you're thinking about how can I support everyone else. But at the same time, as you said, you just got laid off and you have bills to pay. And yeah, I'm something of like a social justice warrior, not in the sense of like, oh, let me go sit and block traffic, but in the sense of like, if I see a wrong, I recently learned I have a lot of like autistic characteristics. I'm not on the spectrum, but I'm looking at it. And it's like, I see something that is not the way that it's supposed to be, and it drives me fucking nuts. And obviously the human element is a big part of it. But a big part of it is like, I know your story. I know Nadir's story. I know Russian cat food story. I know how much work goes into these projects. And to hear you like not allowing yourself to dream big because of the financial, that's what it feels like from me, because you're like, it's a 5-6 years to where we can get a foundation, whereas if I know there's 3,000 machines out there, and if they each contributed $3, that would be a 1 year away plan, and you'd be hiring and scaling. Now I get it. I also don't like to grow businesses fast. I'm kind of talking your ear off. I also like slow, steady,
It's
small
okay.
teams, but I also would really like for you to be able to delegate some of the CAD work so you can think about Milo too. I don't know. That's my whole thing.
That's in that machine over there.
Ah, okay,
That's
great.
already done.
Great.
But yeah, I get you. Just a small correction. So it's more not to berate you, but more because if people watch this, they might
Sure.
say.
But also
We're
berate
not
me.
got 3,000 machines. No.
Ah, okay.
We've not got 3,000 machines. We've got 151 machines as of today.
Okay.
And then 3,000 people in Discord.
Got
Just
it. Okay.
nothing bad. I'd also like to answer something that someone said in your chat, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Someone said something about they were new to 3D printing, but they view 3D printers like microwaves. I wouldn't pay to support the microwave. The
Yeah.
difference is you're paying the margin of the microwave when you buy it, right? The manufacturer, right, will have a certain margin. Their 40% margin is a fairly typical one. They'll be making that money from that sale. They've made that money from that sale.
And on replacement parts and service.
And on replacement parts. And on when you need to buy a new microwave in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So they're making, you're giving them that support. You're just giving it all at once.
Yes.
Whereas in the open source community, your support then often not make any margin. The company who sells the kits might make a margin.
Right.
But the creators don't make that margin.
Right.
A lot of the time they don't make anything. So having that support is actually just
Yeah.
paying in place of where they would normally have that
Yeah. By the way, I want to end on a positive note and say, I hope Nadir, well, this is public, and say like there's hope.
Oh yeah.
And I'll give some examples. Like Nadir is now, I think, the #2 printer part based subscription on printables. And his designs are largely predominantly open source, based on open source designs. I don't know if it's enough to support him and Christian, but also Multiboard, right, is not fully free and open source, but it's all free. He has like a unique license, whereas like, you can't, it's not public domain in the way that open source is. I don't understand it, but basically the bottom line is you can't do whatever you want, but all the parts are available for free. I think the big difference is you can't sell his files, whereas if something is open source, I could take the designs for the Prusa Mark III and sell them online, Anyway, and he's now making a living, and doing this full time. There is hope, and I think it ultimately comes down to, I believe you teach people how to treat you, right? And it's like if if you all designers say, hey, we've calculated, and if every person who built a Milo were to just contribute $5 a month for as long as they're using it, if it starts collecting dust, stop paying. But then we'd be able to do these 10 things, and just being comfortable in doing that. And like, let's be real, okay? I'm an extreme case. I have 20 printers. But on a given month, I use Voron, Clipper, ERCF, Happy Hair. I don't really use my Positron that much. And again, I'm an extreme case, and that's 4. If I gave them each $5, it would be $20. The lunch that I was shoveling down my face before we started this call cost almost $20. Like, it wouldn't make a dent financially to me, but it would make a huge difference if everyone did that for Voron, ERCF, Happy Hair, Milo. So seek out those open source projects that you're using, guys, and just set up that's my takeaway from this call, Jake, is set up a recurring billing, and just every month, not just when you build a Voron or when you build a Milo, every month, even if it's less on a monthly basis for now, every month. It's powerful. How can we support you? Because I have another call after this, but how can we support you? And as Iconic Fab said, how can we help you get to your game plan for 5 years, next quarter, or at least in this year?
Okay, so currently I'm looking at basically supporting myself to getting to like a minimum wage bracket. So I know that sounds weird, but that's at least a start. That's at least a start. So we're about a fifth of the way there. And that would cover all my bills and also give me a little bit of freedom to do some more design stuff every month.
Right.
So if you go to either our Discord or to the website, or if you go to Millennium Machines Official on YouTube, there are links in all those places to the main PayPal account for Millennium or the Patreon account.
Great.
And you can do recurring. If you didn't know this, you can do recurring payments through PayPal. So if you want to do it through that and you don't trust Patreon, there's good reasons to do either way. You can do that. If you want to go, if there's a specific developer who has helped you, go to the Discord. There's a channel called Donate to a Developer, and they have all the personal accounts for everyone. So if you wanted to donate directly to 9 Mile or to Phil or to Dave or that lot, you can go and develop and send some money their way.
Fantastic. Jake, we'll put those links in the description. I want to thank you for everything you do for the community, but also for taking the time today. And I look forward to seeing you at some more events, and hopefully I'll be a little bit more CAM educated by then, and we can rap about CAM.
Yeah, definitely. If you ever want to just hop on a call and do some CAM stuff, let me know. And thanks for having me.
I might take you up on it. Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. I'll take us out here and we can debrief. Here we go. Outro.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infill Podcast. For show notes or links to anything mentioned in today's episode, visit thenextlayer.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to leave us a review wherever you're listening, or click the like button to let us know, and consider subscribing to The Next Layer on YouTube so you can tune in live and participate in the next conversation. We'll see you on The Next Layer.